The obsidian walls of the high synod of Kalar absorbed the light of the dying red giant outside, casting the vast, circular chamber into a perpetual blood-hued twilight that smelled of ozone and ancient, polished metal. Here, in the heart of the Ethelgard dominion, silence was not merely the absence of sound. It was a heavy, suffocating physical presence, a weight that pressed against the chest of every delegate, every warlord, and every planetary governor gathered within the amphitheater. The air was cold, recycled through filtration systems that had been humming without pause for 3,000 years, scrubbing away the impurities of biology to leave only the sterile, frigid atmosphere preferred by the Kalar High Command. In the center of the room, suspended in a gravity-null field, floated the hololith of the known sectors, a shimmering, three-dimensional representation of the galaxy that the Dominion claimed as its birthright. It was a map of conquest, a tapestry of stars linked by the crimson lines of supply routes, subjugated worlds, and heavily fortified borders. Yet, amidst the intricate web of Dominion control, there was a void, a patch of darkness near the edge of the galactic spiral, a region of space that the navigational computers refused to chart with certainty, a region that had recently begun to emit signals that defied the logic of the Ethelgard's most advanced science. This was the source of the fear that now rippled through the gathered assembly, a fear that no one dared to voice aloud, but which hung in the air like the static charge before a lightning strike. High Exarch Vok, a towering figure encased in ceremonial armor forged from the hulls of conquered starships, stood upon the central dais, his four eyes narrowing as he gazed at the anomaly. He was old, his carapace scarred by the plasma burns of the Unification Wars, and he had seen civilizations rise and fall beneath the heel of his fleet. Yet this new variable, this humanity, unsettled him in a way he could not articulate. "The reports are consistent, High Exarch," said Subcommander Ryloth, his voice trembling slightly as he gestured with a clawed manipulator toward the dark patch on the hololith. Ryloth was a bureaucrat, a creature of logistics and data, not of war, and his mandibles clicked nervously as he spoke. "The long-range sensor buoys in the Theta Quadrant have confirmed the readings. The energy signatures are erratic. They do not match any known propulsion system, nor do they conform to the standard distinct harmonics of fusion or antimatter drives. It is as if they are manipulating the fabric of spacetime itself, yet doing so with a crudeness that suggests primitive understanding. And yet, the speed, the sheer velocity of their expansion is impossible. In the time it has taken us to convene this council, they have established outposts in 3 neighboring systems. They are not conquering Exarch. They are simply appearing like mold on a rotting fruit." Vok remained silent, his gaze fixed on the holographic representation of the Sol system, the cradle of this new species. The intelligence dossiers described them as soft, shell-less bipeds, creatures of calcium and water, lacking natural armor, lacking natural weapons, and possessing a chaotic, fractured history of internecine conflict that should have resulted in their self-annihilation millennia ago. They were illogical. They were emotional. They were weak. And yet they were here, pushing against the borders of the Dominion with a reckless abandon that suggested either supreme arrogance or a complete lack of survival instinct. The Dominion had spent centuries manicuring the galaxy, pruning the weak, enslaving the useful, and destroying the dangerous. Order was the supreme law of the universe. Order was the only defense against the entropy that sought to unmake the stars. And these humans, with their leaking radio waves and their erratic slip space drives, were the antithesis of order. They were noise. They were chaos. "We cannot allow this infection to spread," Vok finally rumbled, his voice a deep basso profound that resonated through the deck plates, silencing the murmurs of the gathered warlords. He turned his massive head, his multifaceted eyes scanning the ranks of the assembly. "The Dominion is the shield of civilization. We are the wall against the dark. If we allow a species that does not understand the rules of the galaxy to roam freely, they will destabilize the delicate balance of the trade routes. They will incite the lesser races. They will bring ruin. We have analyzed their transmissions. They speak of exploration. They speak of peace. These are the lies of the weak who seek to buy time until they can strike. We know the nature of the universe. There is only the predator and the prey. If they are not the predator, then they are the prey. And if they believe they can be neither, then they are fools who must be removed for the Sapphic." "Why of all?" A roar of approval went up from the warrior caste, a cacophony of clicking mandibles and stomping armored boots. The Ethelgard were a martial people. War was their religion, their economy, and their purpose. To be denied a conflict was to be denied meaning. The prospect of a new campaign, a crusade against a soft, naive species, ignited the bloodlust that simmered beneath their disciplined exterior. The fleet is ready, Exarch. General Krall stepped forward, his armor polished to a mirror sheen, the medals of a dozen genocides clinking on his chest. The 3rd, 4th, and 7th armadas are fueled and provisioned. We have the firepower to glass their homeworld within a single planetary rotation. We will burn their colonies, shatter their orbital infrastructure, and reduce their fleets to drifting debris. We will send a message that the Dominion tolerates no rivals. Let us launch the armada. Let us end this humanity before it becomes more than a nuisance. Vok nodded slowly, but his mind was not entirely at ease. There was something missing from the equation, a variable he could not isolate. The humans had not responded to the Dominion's initial automated warnings. They had not raised shields when the scout ships probed their perimeter. They had simply continued their work, building massive, spindly structures in the void, structures that looked less like fortresses and more like instruments, scientific instruments of a scale that dwarfed the largest Dominion dreadnoughts. Why would a species on the brink of war build observatories instead of bunkers? Why would they direct their energy output toward the sensors instead of the weapons? It smacked of a trap, or a madness so profound it was indistinguishable from strategy. Launch the armadas, Vok commanded, his voice finalizing the fate of billions. But send the flagship Tyrant's Will at the vanguard. I will lead this campaign myself. I wish to look into the eyes of their leaders when they realize the magnitude of their error. I wish to see if they beg for mercy or if they die with the dignity of a soldier. Let the galaxy know that the Ethelgard do not share the stars. The order went out, traveling through the hypercom relays at superluminal speeds, triggering the mobilization of a military machine that had not been fully awakened in 500 years. Across a dozen staging grounds, the fusion engines of 10,000 warships flared to life, turning the darkness of the void into a blinding sky of man-made stars. Leviathans of steel and composite armor, bristling with plasma lances, kinetic railguns, and antimatter torpedoes, broke formation and aligned their vectors toward the coordinates of the human frontier. It was an ocean of metal, a tsunami of destruction designed to overwhelm, to intimidate, and to annihilate. No species in recorded history had ever withstood the full might of 3 Dominion armadas. The outcome was mathematically certain. The humans were already dead. They simply hadn't stopped breathing yet. The journey through the slip-space currents was a blur of distorted starlight and gravitational shear. On the bridge of the Tyrant's Will, Vok stood before the main view screen, watching the countdown to reversion. The mood on the bridge was one of grim professional anticipation. Officers monitored the readouts, checking weapon capacitors, shield harmonics, and targeting arrays. There was no laughter, no boasting, only the cold efficiency of killers preparing for the kill. The strategy was simple. Exit slip space at the edge of the human system, unleash a saturation bombardment to cripple their defenses, and then sweep in with boarding parties to secure the planetary centers. It was a textbook maneuver, practiced 1,000 times in the simulations. But as the countdown reached 0, and the stars snapped back into their normal configurations, the reality of what awaited them shattered the silence of the bridge. The fleet reverted into real space, the fabric of the universe tearing open to vomit forth the Ethelgard war machine. 10,000 ships arrayed in a wall of battle, sensors sweeping the system for targets. Report, Vok barked, his eyes adjusting to the sudden shift in light. Where is the enemy fleet? Where are their orbital defenses? The sensor officer, a young Ethelgard with pale chitin, stared at his console, his mandibles frozen in shock. He tapped the screen repeatedly as if trying to clear a glitch. Exarch, I am reading no fleet. There are no orbital defense platforms. There are no minefields. The system is empty. Vok stomped forward, shoving the officer aside to look at the raw data himself. It was true. The scanner showed the local star, the planetary bodies, and the background radiation, but there was no military presence. No swarms of fighters, no capital ships maneuvering to intercept. Had they fled? Had they known the Dominion was coming and abandoned their worlds in terror? W. 8, the sensor officer gasped, pointing to a single blip on the edge of the tactical display. There, one contact, stationary, bearing 040, distance 3 million clicks. It is, holding position directly in our flight path. Vok zoomed the view screen on the coordinates. A single ship, not a fleet, not a squadron, one solitary vessel, and it was strange. It did not look like a warship. It lacked the aggressive angular geometry of a combat vessel. It was a long, cylindrical construct, vast in scale, easily 3 times the length of the Tyrant's Will, but delicate, composed of intricate latticework, spinning rings, and exposed modules that looked like they would shatter under a single kinetic impact. It was painted a stark, blinding white, contrasting sharply with the black of space. And along its hull, pulsing with a soft, rhythmic blue light, were symbols that the translation software identified as the unbound horizon. It sat there alone against the backdrop of the nebula, facing the gathered might of 10,000 warships with a serene, almost insulting stillness. "Is it a weapon?" General Krall asked, stepping up beside Vok, his voice laced with confusion. "A bomb ship, a suicide vessel intended to detonate in our midst." Vok studied the readings. "Its energy output is massive," he muttered. "But it is not directed outward, it is internal. The ship is channeling power into shielding. No, not shielding. It is channeling power into a navigational array and life support. There are life signs aboard, thousands of them, but not soldiers. The bioscans indicate civilians, families, scientists." The confusion on the bridge deepened. The Ethelgard were prepared for war. They were prepared for resistance. They were not prepared for a single, massive, undefended ship filled with non-combatants blocking their path. It was a gesture that defied all tactical logic. Was it a plea for mercy? A sacrificial offering? "They are hailing us, Exarch," the communications officer announced, his voice hushed. "Wideband transmission, audio and video directed at the entire fleet." Vok straightened, his pride bristling. "Put it on screen. Let us hear their surrender." The main holographic emitter flickered and the image of a human appeared. It was a female, her skin pale, her hair tied back in a severe knot. She wore a uniform, but it was not military gray or camouflage. It was a deep midnight blue, adorned with symbols of star charts and atoms. Her face was lined with exhaustion, her eyes dark and heavy, but her expression was one of absolute, terrifying calm. She did not look like a leader facing extinction. She looked like a surgeon preparing for a difficult operation. She sat in a chair that seemed too large for her, surrounded by displays that flowed with streams of complex data. "This is Captain Alara Vance of the United Earth vessel Unbound Horizon," she spoke, her voice clear, translated instantly into the guttural clicking of the Ethelgard tongue. "I am addressing the command structure of the incoming fleet. You have entered a restricted zone. Your weapons are charged, your shields are raised. You have come with the intent of violence. I am asking you, as a representative of the United Earth Coalition, to power down your weapons and alter your course immediately. This is not a threat. This is a safety advisory. You are standing in the path of a hazard you do not understand. Please turn back." Vok stared at the screen, stunned into silence for a heartbeat before a wave of fury washed over him. A safety advisory? This soft, fleshy creature dared to issue a safety advisory to the High Exarch of the Dominion. "Open a channel," Vok roared. The link was established. "I am High Exarch Vok of the Ethelgard Dominion," he bellowed, his image projected back to the human ship. "You stand before the might of the galaxy's supreme power. You are one ship against 10,000. You have no weapons that can harm us. You have no shields that can stop us. You speak of hazards. We are the hazard. We are the storm. Surrender your vessel and prepare for boarding or be vaporized where you drift. This is your only warning." On the screen, Captain Vance didn't flinch. She didn't look angry. She didn't look afraid. She just looked sad. She looked down at her console, tapped a few keys, and then looked back up at Vok with a gaze that seemed to pierce through the light years, through the hull of his ship, and into the marrow of his bones. "Exarch Vok," she said softly. "You have counted our ships. You have counted our guns, and because the number is 0, you think we are weak. You think we are prey. But you have made a fundamental error in your calculations. You assume that because we do not build warships, we do not know how to destroy. You assume that because we do not conquer, we do not have power." She paused, and the lights on her bridge seemed to dim. "We did not come to this sector to expand. We did end. Ought come here to colonize. We came here to fix something broken, and you and your armada, are standing directly in the focus point of the repair." "Repair," Vok sneered. "You babble nonsense. Fire the forward batteries, vaporize that ship." "Belay that order," Vok shouted, a sudden, inexplicable instinct seizing him. There was something in her voice, a certainty, a weight of truth that cut through his arrogance. "Explain yourself, human. What repair, what focus point?" Captain Vance leaned forward. "Sensors," she said. "Check the star behind us, not the visual spectrum. Check the gravitational shear. Check the subspace resonance." Vok gestured to the sensor officer. The officer's hands flew across the controls. Moments later, the officer gasped, a sound of pure biological terror. "Exarch, the star, it's screaming." "Screaming?" "The gravitational constants are fluctuating wildly," the officer stammered. "The core of the star is destabilizing. It is not going supernova. It is dissolving. Something is eating it from the inside. A dimensional fracture, a tear in the skin of the universe. It's expanding. If it isn't stopped, it will consume this system. Then the next. Then the sector. The shockwave alone will propagate through subspace. It will shatter the slip-space lanes for 1,000 light years. It will isolate the Dominion. It will destroy the trade routes. Exarch, the readings indicate the fracture is already reaching out. We are within its pull. The bridge of the tyrants will fell into a horrified silence. The enemy wasn't the human ship. The enemy was physics itself. The enemy was a cosmic catastrophe that the Ethelgard had been too busy polishing their guns to notice. We must retreat, General Krall whispered, his bravado gone. Fleet-wide order, reverse engines, jump to slip space. You cannot jump, Captain Vance's voice returned, cutting through the panic. The fracture has destabilized the subspace manifold. If you engage your slip-space drives now, you will be torn apart. You will be scattered across a dozen dimensions, none of them habitable. You are trapped here, Exarch, just like us. Vok felt a coldness settle in his gut that had nothing to do with the ship's temperature. Trapped. The mighty armada, the pride of the Dominion, rendered helpless by a phenomenon they couldn't shoot. They were going to die, here in the dark alongside these primitive humans. Then we die together, Vok snarled, though the fire had gone out of his voice. You have failed, human. Your repair has failed. No, Vance said. We haven't failed. We were waiting. We were waiting for the alignment, and we were waiting to see if you would listen. She took a deep breath. The unbound horizon is not a warship. It is a stellar aneurysm clip, a needle. We are going to stitch the wound shut, but the energy required to seal the breach is significant. We have the technology to channel it, but we need mass. We need a reaction mass dense enough to anchor the gravitational loom. She looked at Vok, and for the first time a small, grim smile touched her lips. We need a shield, a physical shield to absorb the backblast of the closure. We calculated that we would need a dense asteroid field or a small moon, but we didn't have one. We were going to try to do it alone, but the math said we would burn up before the seal was complete. We were going to die trying to save this sector, to save your sector. The realization hit Vok like a physical blow. The humans knew about the threat. They had come here alone to stop it, to save the very galaxy that the Ethelgard sought to dominate, and they had been prepared to sacrifice themselves to do it. But now, Vance continued, you are here, 10,000 ships, heavy armor, high-density alloys, powerful shields. You brought us exactly what we needed. You brought us the wall. You want to use my fleet as a shield? Vok asked, incredulous. I want to use your fleet to save us all, Vance corrected. If you align your ships in a spherical formation around the unbound horizon, link your shields, and push your structural integrity fields to maximum, you can dissipate the entropic backlash. We will channel the energy. You will endure the storm. If you hold the line, the fracture closes. We all live. If you run or if you fight, the star dies, the sector dies, and your empire crumbles. So, Exarch Vok, I am asking you again. Not to surrender, but to serve. For the first time in your history, do not conquer, protect. The bridge was silent. Every eye was on Vok. The choice was impossible. It was a humiliation. To take orders from a human, to turn the tyrant's will into a mere brick in a human wall, it went against every doctrine of the Dominion. But Vok looked at the sensor readings. He saw the red line of the fracture growing, eating the light of the star. He looked at the unbound horizon, that fragile white needle ag. Ain't the dark? He realized then that the humans were not weak. They were terrifying. They had mastered the art of survival to a degree the Ethelgard could not comprehend. They did not build fleets because they did not fear enemies. They feared the silence. They feared the dark. And they fought it with math and engineering and a courage that was quiet and absolute. Transmission, Vok said, his voice low. Fleet-wide. The comms officer nodded. The channel opened. This is High Exarch Vok, he spoke, his voice echoing through 10,000 hulls. All ships disengage weapons, form up on the human vessel unbound horizon, geostationary sphere formation, link deflector grids, direct all auxiliary power to forward shields, prepare for high-impact gravitational turbulence. He paused, struggling with the words. We are assisting in a containment procedure. Do not fire unless fired upon. Vok out. The order was met with confusion, then discipline. The Ethelgard were soldiers. They followed orders. Slowly, majestically, the armada broke its battle wall. The ships turned, their engines flaring, and began to drift toward the human vessel. They surrounded it, layer upon layer of steel and gunmetal, a sphere of war encompassing the sphere of science. The tyrants will took point, directly between the unbound horizon and the dying star. We are in position, Captain Vance, Vok said, the taste of the words bitter in his mouth. Do what you must. Acknowledged, Exarch, Vance replied. Initiating the stitch, brace yourselves, it's going to get bright. On the view screen, the unbound horizon began to change. The latticework hull opened up, revealing a core of pulsating, blinding white light. Beams of pure coherence shot out from the human ship, not toward the enemy, but toward the star. They struck the event horizon of the fracture, grappling with the tearing fabric of spacetime. The universe screamed. A sound that was not sound, but a vibration in the teeth, a shaking of the soul. The backlash hit the fleet instantly. Shields flared brilliant violet as the wave of entropy washed over them. Alarms screamed on the bridge of the tyrant's will. Sparks showered from the overhead conduits. "Shields at 60%, the tactical officer yelled. "Structural integrity failing on decks 4 through 9. We are taking massive stress damage." "Hold the line," Vok roared, gripping the railing of the dais until the metal warped under his claws. "Divert all power to the forward grid. Do not let the formation break." Outside, the smaller frigates of the Ethelgard fleet were being tossed like leaves in a hurricane. Some crumpled, their hulls buckling under the gravitational shear, exploding into silent fireballs, but the line held. The massive dreadnoughts absorbed the punishment, their armor ablating, their frames groaning, but they did not move. They shielded the human ship. They shielded the needle while it did its work. "The fracture is stabilizing," the sensor officer screamed over the din. "The human beam! It's pulling the edges together, it's working, but the feedback loop is increasing. One more wave, Exarch, a big one." "Brace," Vok shouted. The final wave hit. It was a tsunami of white light. The tyrant's will shuddered violently, the artificial gravity failing, throwing the crew into the air. Darkness took them as the main reactor scrammed to prevent an overload. For a moment there was only the sensation of falling, of being unmade. And then, silence. The emergency lights flickered on, bathing the bridge in a dull amber glow. Gravity returned slowly. Vok pulled himself up from the deck, shaking the dizziness from his head. "Report," he rasped. We are intact, Exarch," the officer whispered, disbelief coloring his tone. "Shield generators are fused, weapons are offline, engines are dead, but we are here." "The star?" Vok asked. "Stable, the fracture is gone. Readings are returning to normal, the unbound horizon." The human ship. Vok looked at the view screen. The smoke cleared. The unbound horizon was still there, but it was dark. Its lights were out. Its hull was scorched black, the delicate rings shattered, the latticework bent and broken. It drifted listlessly, a burnt matchstick in the void. "Hail them," Vok ordered, "immediately." There was static, long, agonizing moments of static, and then a voice, weak, coughing, but alive. "Unbound horizon to Ethelgard fleet." Captain Vance's voice came through, sounding like she was speaking through a crushed lung. "That was a hell of a ride, Exarch. Thanks for the umbrella." Vok let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. He looked around his bridge. His crew was battered, bleeding, but alive. He looked at the fleet's status. They had lost ships, hundreds of them, but thousands remained. They had survived a cosmic event that should have erased them from history, and they had done it not by killing, but by endure. "Ingd." "Captain Vance," Vok said, his voice surprisingly gentle. "Your vessel is damaged. You are drifting. Do you require assistance?" There was a pause. "We're dead in the water, Exarch. Main power is gone. Life support is on reserves. Yeah, we could use a tow, if you're not going to shoot us, that is." Vok looked at the tactical display. The enemy marker on the human ship was still blinking red. He reached out and tapped the console, changing the marker to green. "Ally." "We will not shoot, Captain," Vok said. "We are sending shuttles, we have medical bays, we have engineers, we will stabilize your vessel." He paused, struggling with a concept that was alien to his culture. You saved my fleet, you saved this sector. Why? You knew we came to destroy you." "Because," Vance's voice came back, stronger now. "We don't run from hope, Exarch, we run toward it, and sometimes you have to bring the hope with you, even if it means walking into the mouth of a gun. Besides, the universe is big and it's dark, and it's full of things that want to eat stars. We figured. Maybe it's better to have 10,000 warships on our side than against us. We figured if we showed you what real power looked like, the power to fix, not break, you might understand." Vok stared at the burnt hull of the human ship. He thought of the war he had planned, the conquest. It seemed small now, petty, a child's game played in the sandbox while the tide was coming in. The humans had seen the tide, and they had built a boat. "We understand," Vok said. "The Ethelgard understand." In the weeks that followed, the dynamic of the galaxy shifted. It did not happen overnight. There were no treaties signed with fanfare. There was simply a reality that could not be ignored. The Ethelgard Armada, the most feared military force in the galaxy, escorted the crippled, unbound Horizon back to Earth. They did not arrive as conquerors. They arrived as an honor guard. The image of the terrifying alien dreadnoughts towing the white scientific vessel broadcast across all frequencies, shocking the Council of Worlds, silencing the warmongers, and confusing the spies. When they reached the Sol system, they did not find a fleet waiting for them. They found more ships like the Unbound Horizon, giant, spindly, fragile ships, the Silent Gardener, the Weaver of Light, the Quantum Tiller, ships designed to terraform, to harvest energy, to clean atmospheres, to fold space. The humans had built a fleet, yes, but it was a fleet of workers, a fleet of caretakers. Vok met with the human High Council on Luna. He walked into the chamber without his armor, a gesture of vulnerability that terrified his bodyguards but earned the respect of the human delegates. He spoke of the fracture. He spoke of the shield. He spoke of the courage of the unbound Horizon. "We looked at the stars and saw land to be taken," Vok told the assembly. "You looked at the stars and saw a garden to be tended. We thought we were strong because we could break stone. We have learned that true strength is the ability to keep the stone from breaking itself." The alliance that formed was not one of trade or borders. It was an alliance of function. The Ethelgard provided the steel, the guns, the muscle. They became the guardians. The humans provided the science, the vision, the restoration. They became the architects. Together they moved outward, not to conquer but to secure. When a star threatened to go supernova and destroy a primitive civilization, the Ethelgard fleet held the line while human engineers stabilized the core. When a plague ravaged a colony world, Ethelgard dropships delivered human doctors and synthesizers. But the true test, the true meaning of the message, "Run for your hope," came 10 years later. Deep in the void, far beyond the charted rim, the long-range sensors of the Unbound Horizon, now fully repaired and upgraded with Ethelgard alloy plating, picked up a signal. It was old, ancient, and it was hungry. It was the signal of the Void Eaters, the entities that had caused the star fracture. They were not a natural phenomenon, they were a swarm. A cosmic locust plague that moved from galaxy to galaxy, consuming all energy, all life, leaving only cold dust in their wake. They were coming. A wave of darkness light years wide. Captain Vance, now Admiral Vance of the Joint Command, stood on the bridge of the Horizon, looking at the data. Beside her stood High Exarch Vok, his armor painted with the emblem of Earth alongside the sigil of the Dominion. "It is them," Vance said quietly. "The ones we were built to fight, the Great Silence." Vok looked at the screen. The swarm was massive. It dwarfed the Dominion Armada. It dwarfed anything they had ever seen. It was an extinction event. "They are coming," Vok rumbled, "and they are many." "Yes," Vance said. She turned to the comms officer. "Open a channel to the galaxy, all frequencies, all species, Dominion Federatio. End Syndicate Independent, everyone." The channel opened. Vance took a breath. "This is Admiral Vance of the United Fleets. We have detected the approach of the Void Eaters. They are coming to consume our stars. If you stay in your homes, you will die. If you hide behind your borders, you will die. We are establishing a rally point at the Galactic core. We are building a fortress, not of guns, but of light. We are going to ignite the core. We are going to create a firebreak that they cannot cross. But we need ships. We need energy. We need everyone." She looked at the camera, her eyes hard, her voice steady. "We used to think survival was about being the last one standing. We were wrong. Survival is about standing together. The Ethelgard Armada is already moving. The human engineering core is already building. We are your shield, we are your sword, but we cannot do it alone. So I am telling you now, do not run from the fear. Run for your hope. Run to us. Come to the core. And together we will light a fire that will burn the shadows away forever." Vok stepped forward, his massive hand resting on the console. "The Dominion stands with humanity," he growled. "We do not run, we fight. Join us or fade into the dark." Across the galaxy, 1,000 civilizations heard the call. They looked at their skies. They looked at their petty wars, their trade disputes, their borders. And then they looked at the sensors, at the encroaching dark. Slowly, one by one, the engines lit up. Ships of every shape and size, warships, freighters, yachts, barges. They turned their prows toward the galactic core. They turned toward the human ship and the alien fleet that stood beside it. They ran for their hope. And as the endless armada of a united galaxy converged on the center, Vok looked at Vance. "It will be a glorious battle," he said. "No, Vok," Vance smiled, watching the stars fill the screen. "It will be a glorious victory, because this time we brought friends." The unbound horizon fired its main thrusters, leading the charge into the heart of the galaxy, the tip of a spear made of a million worlds, ready to pierce the darkness and claim the dawn. The message was clear. The universe was cold and cruel and vast, but it was no longer lonely. Humanity had sent one ship, and in doing so had taught the galaxy that the strongest weapon was not a gun, but a hand extended in the dark. And now that hand was a fist, and it was ready to strike back. End of archive record. The transcript ended, leaving the archivist in silence. The young Ethelgard cadet sitting across the table stared at the data pad with wide eyes. "So, the stories are true," the cadet whispered. "The humans, they didn't conquer us, we helped them." The archivist, an ancient human with skin like parchment and eyes that had seen the birth of the new epic, nodded slowly. "They didn't conquer us, little one. They woke us up. They showed us that the wall we built around ourselves was not a fortress but a tomb. And when the sky fell, they were the ones who held it up until we were strong enough to help." The archivist gestured to the window, where the lights of the Galactic core station burned with the brightness of a captured star, a beacon visible across half the quadrant. "That is the legacy, not the wars, not the ruins, that light. It's the fire we built together, it's the hope we ran toward." The cadet looked out at the station, at the thousands of ships from 100 species docking and departing, a bustling, chaotic, beautiful harmony of life. "And the Void Eaters?" the cadet asked. "Did we win?" The archivist smiled, a slow crinkling of the eyes. "Look at the stars, cadet. Are they still there?" "Yes." "Then we won." The cadet nodded, a newfound sense of pride swelling in his chest. He stood, saluted the human archivist with the cross-claw salute of the Ethelgard, and turned to leave. He had a shift to start. He was a pilot on a terraforming frigate, a joint human-Ethelgard vessel designed to breathe life into dead worlds. He had always thought it was boring work, gardening as the elders called it. But now he saw it differently. He wasn't just a gardener, he was a warrior of the light. He was a keeper of the flame. He walked out of the archive, his steps echoing on the deck plates, ready to run toward the Hope. The archivist watched him go, then turned back to the terminal. He keyed in a command, and the screen flickered, bringing up a new file. It was an old image, grainy and low resolution. It showed a single white ship, fragile and small, standing alone against a wall of 10,000 warships. The caption read simply, "The First Seed." "Good hunting, Vance," the archivist whispered to the ghosts of the past. "Good hunting, Vok, the garden is blooming nicely." He powered down the terminal, and the room went dark, save for the eternal, defiant light of the core outside, burning against the night. The story was over, but Ernie, the journey never ended. The Hope was always just over the horizon, unbound and waiting. In the vast distance, a new signal pinged on the deep-range sensors. Faint, irregular, not a threat this time, a distress call, a civilization in the darkness crying out for help. The station's alarms didn't blare a warning of war. They chimed a notification of duty. The fleets began to move, not an armada of conquest, but an armada of mercy. The cycle continued. The dark would always be there, but so would the light. And that was enough.